Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Micaela Forelli, Managing Director, Europe at M&G Investments, Luxembourg. She explains why caring leadership and constant innovation are critical to maintaining sustainable performance and investor attraction. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex and the City. And this afternoon, I have our first Italian guest on the show. That is Micaela Forelli, who's the Managing Director of Europe for M&G Investments. A big welcome to you. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, Rachel. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
A big welcome. So, Micaela, I know that you come from Italy, but you spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom. So, I'd love to explore a little bit, how you ended up in the United Kingdom, how you entered the financial services industry, and just tell our listeners a bit more about you.
I'm an Italian, as you said. I was born on the shores of Lake Como in the northern part of Italy to an entrepreneurial family. And I guess business and finance were probably in my blood since the very start. My father was running companies. Now my brother does it, and all my extended family as well. So I've been part of the world of businesses for much of my life. I went to study in Milan University, and I took on finance and business administration. Not much of a surprise there, I guess, but I also loved to keep some classical interests and kept interested in art, for example, and in literature. So over time, I combined a bit my interests. However, when I finished my first university degree, the business called, and I started initially as a finance controller, a junior controller, and then I went on becoming the finance director to an industrial company in the north of Italy. And from there, actually, very international setup, because I had the chance and the privilege to work in China for a period when China was opening up investments to foreigners, and I helped establish a joint venture with a Chinese entity many years ago, and I was in charge of the financial setup of it. And after 5 years with this industrial company, I decided to take another time back to school, back to learn again, and I took my MBA. And after the MBA at Bocconi University, I actually got offered a job for another internationalization project, which happened to be with Prudential PLC, who had recently acquired M&G Investments. And wanted M&G Investments to internationalize its activities. And that was in the beginning of the 2000s. And I then got offered a job in London, and I moved to London to work in the strategic planning and business development team of the so-called M&G Europe at the time. So we were a brand new startup, a little bit entrepreneurial in a huge financial services group. And that's how I moved to the UK, and I moved into financial services. And I've been with M&G for several years now, covering different roles. I I helped set up M&G Investments in Italy and then in Southern Europe when we branched to Spain and to France. And then after I came back to London again for another stint at global financial institutions. But more recently, I have been covering my current role, which is the managing director for the European business of M&G, which spans across our distribution investments and our corporate business functions from Luxembourg.
Understood. So as you know, Flex in the City is all about leadership. I'd love to know, if there have been any leaders that have really inspired you in your own career to date, Micaela.
Many different people in different phases of my life. When I was young, I think even implicitly the activities that my father and his family had been carrying out for more than a generation, actually already then, gave me inspiration, in particular on how you can conjugate what you do as a company and what is the meaning for the legacy and for the long-term value. Family companies tend to be very involved with the values of what the company does because it is very much interlinked with the values of the family as well. So this long-term approach, caring for the life of the company and the life of the business beyond the current generation and projected into the future for much longer time. In my schools, I was blessed to meet professors who had a great passion and a great ambition passion for their topics and a great ambition to transfer the passion to us. And so from there, I think the key traits of this leadership were to never stay still, to keep going, to keep learning, to keep looking at what else can be asked, what new questions can be researched, and what innovations can be brought in. And financial services, I worked with many executives and they were inspiring. And more recently, I had a board chair who really inspired a lot. The key characteristics were common between executives and professors and non-exec. I think, as I said, accumulated by the passion for their work, the willingness to lead and add to the long-term value and to maintain integrity, but also to enjoy what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of the words that have sprung to mind about you, Micaela, is you're deeply passionate, you have a growth mindset, and you're absolutely kind. Is there anything else that you'd say stands out about you and who you stand for as a leader?
Many times I've been told that I am an independent thinker and that I'm very curious. And I think I recognize myself with those two adjectives. I like to ask myself questions, to ask other people's questions. I like to assess. So I think both curiosity and independent thinking are traits for me. And the other aspect is, and probably this is more, came later in my life when the aspects of ambition and the passion were in a sense achieved, the ability to give back and try and leave a legacy or build a legacy.
Absolutely. So if you had 2 words, three words to describe your own leadership style, what would you say?
I'm collaborative, I'm inclusive, and I'm driven.
Good. I like that. And you care. That's the other thing I'd say, Micaela. You care. Absolutely. So financial services, it's changing, it's evolving, it's adapting, it's growing. What are the skills that you think are needed by financial services leaders today, and to help us be prepared for the future?
Rachel, you mentioned a growth mindset earlier on. I think the mindset needs to be one of adaptation and changing, and it's striking me that the velocity of our industry is accelerating at any point, and not only on our industry. In fact, all around us, several sectors are going at a very high speed. So velocity of thinking and changing, the ability to adapt and to learn new skills all the time. I also think that a key skill is and will be the ability to network. Sometimes network is connotated by a sense of something that may not be natural in people, or it's more difficult to achieve, especially for women leaders. But network is extremely important because it allows to form those connections in financial services. More important than ever, given that we are growingly dependent from other sectors such as technology or other sub-industry segments within the wider financial services world.
Absolutely. And so with that growth mindset in mind, what do you think would be a game changer in financial services? If you could totally change it, Micaela, what do you think needs to happen?
A gap I find there is still in financial services is that we are unable to have a pension product across several jurisdictions. And in my sector, in asset management, we can passport products through many countries and domiciles via directives that have been adopted in different countries, not only in the European Union, but adopted also as standards internationally and beyond. So there is this common standard product or common standard vehicle or series of vehicles, both in the traditional and alternative space, that are extremely effective to be able to accumulate raising capital. In the pension systems, that is not the case beyond national borders, really. And this is the result of different pension regimes, which in turn are stemming from different tax regimes, which are obviously the domain of nations. But if that could be overcome, if there were to be integrated let's say, borders for pension products that would allow, that would be a game changer, because it would allow products to be utilized across jurisdictions, and as well as increasing the trust from the final users to be able to invest more and ultimately get financial security.
And if some of the great Italian organizations were to give some advice to our world or have a different perspective, so, Ferrari or Fiat, is there a great Italian organization that could bring some wisdom to that challenge?
I think that in the past, Italy has demonstrated that innovation is is a key characteristic for the country. Entrepreneurship connected with innovation and across many different sectors, as you mentioned, Rachel. For example, in computer systems, Olivetti was the first one or one of the first companies being able to essentially create a desktop computer, and went on with other innovations that have been game changers for industry and the sector after them. So I think their advice, or what we can take from what they did, is to keep looking at improving ourselves.
So keep looking at improving ourselves, absolutely. So is financial services, Micaela, in your opinion, doing enough to connect with new generations as both investors and employees?
No, my answer is no. There are some bright spots, but much goes back to what we were discussing in the need to have a passion, an interest, and a curiosity, also at the industry level, to drive improvement in the people's financial security and innovating using truly human-centered design methodologies. So ways that can be recognized by humans as trustworthy, and so therefore can allow the innovation to then take place in reality. We are living in a phase in which competition for top talent is expected to remain very intense. So the success for our operations in financial services is very dependent on our ability to attract and to retain highly qualified professionals with the right mix of the skills and also the behaviors to support the business strategy and the culture that we want our organization to have. For us at M&G, we continue to increase the investment in leadership and the managerial development of our colleagues in order to be successful at this, and also to drive the right culture and the right behaviors, especially in a fast-changing world as we are living now. What I would also comment is something that is very close to my values as well, is that these cultures need to be inclusive, need to be taking in consideration of different ways of thinking. And also in particular, now after the last 3 years, to take in consideration the effects of what the pandemic has left us with, because some of the demographics, I think about some of our young colleagues who have, for example, never worked in an organizational environment before, in a corporate environment before. They are lacking the possibility to learn from colleagues and shadowing other colleagues, in particular in the last couple of years, being forced to join organizations and working from remote. We have been launching apprenticeship programs centrally in the United Kingdom, and now we are adopting them also in other countries in Europe. And that's a way for us to also give entry points to young generations, and also honoring our commitments to improve our overall diversity of our talent. So establishing some ratios, for example, of talent pipelines. We would like to improve the diversity of the women representation. And so we have given ratios about that, or ratios about Black and Asian or other ethnic minority background groups, and also ratios about social mobility. So we want to disclose about these going forward, because measurement is also an important part of innovation.
And if you were to give some advice, Micaela, to a young female leader who's entering the industry right now, what would your advice be to that female entering the industry?
In general, I wouldn't necessarily make a distinction between a young female or a young colleague in general. My point would be that we should never stop learning, and we should never stop asking ourselves another questions. So keeping the curiosity live, and remembering the purpose of we do in financial services, which should be aimed at improving the financial security of our clients, really.
Absolutely. With your permission, I'd love to come back to the diversity and inclusion question. And I'd really like to dig in to see how you feel diversity and inclusion impacts the performance of your organization or any organization. Do you have any thoughts on that, Micaela?
One of the very well-researched elements that have brought to the fall or the demise of great systems and great organization has been group thinking. And diversity helps to avoid group thinking. Consensus building decisions, and the downside of having too much of the same opinions in the room. So I think diversity in this sense at any level of the organization is the motor that can improve the performance of companies by avoiding that, but also offering diversity of perspective, diversity of thinking, and also diversity of experiences, and helping mitigate the main risks that can happen when everybody thinks in the same way.
I love what you're saying here about diversity of thought. And it's one of the things that I've always thought was so important, that bringing those different perspectives into organizations. So I love what you're saying there. In financial services, Micaela, what prevents you from sleeping at night?
Firstly, let me say I sleep well. I'm pleased about that. But if I interpret your question as in what are the key challenges on my agenda today, I think one is definitely the proliferation of regulation in a structure which is not very cohesive. So it's a layering of different regulations which have not maybe been thought through in a very orchestrated, cohesive manner. Following the global financial crisis in 2008 and then the recent pandemic crisis as well, we have had an endless stream of changes to regulations locally and internationally. The other aspect that is a challenge, it's a very positive one, is the transformation related to sustainability and to ESG and the non-financial sustainability of what we do in investments. And the amount of change that is needed in parallel, how to juggle that is something that takes a lot of my time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go to one of next to the last question. And when you're not busy working for this great and wonderful financial services industry, Micaela, what do you love to do outside of working hard?
I love to spend time with my family in nature. And I am a keen hiker, so I like to spend time particularly in mountains, and also love art. And so I love visiting exhibitions and traveling as well. It's something that I enjoy a lot, particularly surrounded by my family and my husband.
Absolutely. And so who's your favorite Italian artist,
Caravaggio.
Oh, I need to have a look at his work. Fantastic. So I'll talk to you about one of my favorite Italian artists, who is Leonardo Da Vinci, of course, the great Leonardo Da Vinci, who for me epitomizes the growth mindset, was also a sort of scientist and innovator. So my very final question to you is what advice do you think Leonardo Da Vinci would bring to the financial services industry today?
Leonardo would probably suggest to never stop innovating, never be complacent, stretch yourself out to give new solutions, new ideas, and to improve.
Micaela Forelli, thank you so much. Grazie mille for being on Flex in the City today.
Grazie, Rachel.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.